When I collapsed at work, the doctors called my parents. They never came. Instead, my sister tagged me in a photo, family barbecue without the drama. I said nothing. Days later, still weak and hooked to machines, I saw 67 missed calls and a text from Dad, "We need you. Answer immediately." Without thinking twice, I knew something had fundamentally changed inside me. I'd had a feeling something was wrong for weeks, but I pushed through it like I always did. It wasn't the first time I'd ignored the warning signs, the headaches, dizziness, the occasional tightness in my chest. Because the truth is, I didn't think I could afford to slow down. Not when I was helping cover Mom's Honda payment. Not when my sister Brittany was texting me every few days asking for just a quick loan. And definitely not when Dad kept pretending his missed mortgage payment was somehow my responsibility. That's the part people don't understand. They see the Instagram perfect family posts and think everything's fine. They don't know what it feels like to grow up the only daughter in a house where you're always the background character. My siblings, Brittany and Kyle, could total a car and somehow still get praised for learning a valuable lesson. I once won a regional marketing award and Mom's only response was, "Oh nice. Did you remember to thank your boss?" I didn't even want recognition anymore. I just wanted something back, maybe a sliver of gratitude. But that wasn't in the cards. So I worked. I worked through weekends, covered bills I shouldn't have, and told myself it was fine until that Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk, halfway through prepping a presentation for a major client. I remember standing up to grab some files from the printer, and then nothing, just darkness. I woke up to beeping machines, harsh fluorescent lights, and wires attached to my chest while a nurse adjusted my drip. It was surreal, like one of those moments you think only happen in movies. But it was real, and it wasn't just a panic attack or dehydration. The cardiologist said I'd had a full cardiac event. Could have been fatal if I hadn't collapsed right there in the office where someone could call 911 immediately. My co-workers were the reason I was still breathing. The hospital staff was incredible, kind, professional. When they realized I had no one at my bedside hours later, they told me they'd already contacted my emergency contacts, my parents. I waited. I waited for 2 whole days. Nothing. No texts, no visits, no calls. Then on the 3rd day, I woke up from a nap and checked my phone, thinking maybe there'd been some mix-up with the hospital reception. There was only one notification, a tag on Instagram. It was from Brittany, a photo of her, Kyle, and our parents, all smiles, sitting around a picnic table at Lake Springfield. Mom had even made her famous potato salad. The caption hit me harder than the heart attack ever did, "Family barbecue without the drama." And yes, they tagged me in it like I was some inside joke, like I wasn't half dead in a hospital bed while they were laughing over corn on the cob and burgers. I didn't respond to the post. I just stared at the screen until it dimmed. Something snapped inside me that day, not in a loud, explosive way, but in a quiet, final way. Like a door closing with no intention of ever opening again. I kept recovering slowly. The doctors were monitoring my heart, running tests. I barely spoke unless I had to. And still, not a single word from my family until 4 days later when I woke up to those 67 missed calls and Dad's text, "We need you. Answer immediately." No apologies. No "how are you feeling?" Just those words. I don't know what I was expecting, but I didn't even hesitate. I sat up, still weak, still hooked to machines, and without thinking twice, I dialed back, but not to them. I stared at Dad's text for maybe a full minute. "We need you. Answer immediately." 4 days without a word. 67 missed calls, but that's what they led with. Not "are you okay?" Not "we're sorry we missed this." I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel anything except the kind of dead calm that replaces whatever emotion used to kick in during moments like that. Then I remembered a number I hadn't used in a long time. One I had saved under a name I never deleted, Grandpa Joe. I hadn't called him in months, not because we weren't close, but because I knew how he felt about my immediate family, and I'd been too embarrassed to admit he'd been right all along. But that morning, I called him. He picked up on the 2nd ring like he'd been waiting. Didn't ask how I was feeling or what happened. Just asked which hospital. That was it. No hesitation, no 20 questions, no passive-aggressive silence. Just an immediate response like I actually mattered. That was something I hadn't felt in years. He showed up 40 minutes later, somehow looking exactly the same. Same old Yankees cap, same watch he'd worn since I was a kid, same expression on his face like nothing surprised him anymore, but he was always ready to handle whatever came next. He walked in, sat down in the visitor's chair, looked at me hooked up to all those machines, and said, "So they finally broke you too, huh?" I didn't even ask how he knew. I just nodded. Grandpa Joe stayed with me the entire day. He talked to my nurses, asked real questions about my recovery, and quietly paid for one of the diagnostic tests my insurance had rejected without making a big deal about it. Then he pulled out his old tablet and started helping me sort through the financial disaster I'd left on autopilot. We went through everything. My name was on 4 different loan agreements, 2 credit cards, 3 utility accounts, and car insurance for a Toyota I didn't even drive. It was all so embedded in my routine that I didn't even realize how bad it had gotten. Every time they had a rough patch, I'd stepped in quietly, automatically, because I thought that's what family meant, fixing the holes and not expecting anything back. But the thing is, they'd started expecting me to do it. And when I couldn't, I became the problem. The drama. As Grandpa Joe and I went through my financial records, I started to realize they hadn't just leaned on me, they'd leaned straight through me. I wasn't even a person to them. I was a safety net, a cash dispenser, a reliable family resource they could count on as long as I didn't remind them what they owed in return. Grandpa helped me draft a comprehensive list, every account, every automatic payment, every connection. Then we started shutting them off, one by one. I canceled the auto transfer to Brittany's checking account. She always claimed she was barely scraping by, but she'd been to Disney World twice this year and posted about it constantly. She could handle her own cell phone bill now. Kyle's rent assistance? Gone. Mom's car insurance? She could call Geico herself. I removed my card information and changed all the passwords. And that loan I'd co-signed for Brittany's emergency, the one she'd conveniently stopped mentioning for months, I contacted the bank and filed a dispute. Not because I was trying to destroy her, but because I never agreed to be her permanent backup plan. I was done signing papers for people who wouldn't even show up when I was fighting for my life. Grandpa Joe didn't say much during this process, but every now and then he'd let out this quiet hum sound, like he was both disappointed and completely unsurprised. He was the only one who'd ever told me the truth, that loyalty is only as strong as the people you're loyal to. By the time he left that evening, the calls had tripled. My phone had to stay on silent. Mom had left voicemails suddenly claiming she'd just heard what happened, and was so worried. Brittany was texting in all caps like that would make me respond faster. Kyle had gone completely quiet, which in his case usually meant he was cooking up something worse. Then another message came in from Dad, "This is serious. Call me now. Everything is falling apart." Still no mention of the hospital. Not one word about my heart attack, about what had put me there, about whether I was okay. Just panic, not for me, but because they could sense what was coming. The first domino had fallen, and they knew it. They just didn't realize I was the one who'd pushed it. That night, lying in my hospital bed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, peace. Not the exhausted kind of peace that comes after you've given everything you have. Real peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop trying to earn love from people who see you as a resource instead of a daughter. My phone kept buzzing with notifications, more missed calls, more desperate texts, more demands disguised as concern. But for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't rushing to fix their emergencies. I wasn't calculating how much money I could spare or rearranging my schedule to accommodate their latest crisis. I was just lying there, breathing steadily, watching my heart rate monitor show a rhythm that was finally genuinely stable. The machines weren't the only thing keeping me alive anymore. For the first time, I was choosing life for myself. I was still in the hospital when the real fallout started. At first, it was just voicemails, a dozen, then 2 dozen, then so many I stopped checking. I played one on speaker just to see if anything had changed. It was Mom. "Natalie, I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this isn't the way to do it." That was the tone. Not fear for my well-being, not genuine concern. Just frustration that their personal ATM was suddenly out of order. Brittany texted next. No words at first, just a screenshot of her checking account balance, $47. Then she followed it up with, "What the hell is going on? Fix this now." I stared at the screen, felt anger rising for a second, then let it dissolve. It wasn't new information. It was just louder now, more desperate. Kyle tried a different approach. His text was longer, more emotional. He said he didn't know what drama was happening and that he loved all of us and wanted peace. He ended with, "Please don't punish me for things I didn't do," which was ironic considering the last time we'd spoken. He'd rolled his eyes when I told him I couldn't co-sign another apartment lease. Called me selfish, then didn't speak to me for 4 months. But it was Dad who finally crossed a line I didn't even know I had. He showed up at the hospital. Grandpa Joe had warned me. He'd seen Dad's Silverado in the parking garage earlier, just sitting there like he was waiting for a hostage negotiation to end. The nurses wouldn't let him up to my floor, since he wasn't on my approved visitor list. But that didn't stop him from camping out in the lobby like some kind of stalker. When I didn't come down to see him, he left a note at the nurses' station. Later that day, a text came through, "You're about to destroy everything we've built together. I hope you understand the damage you're causing to this family." Everything we'd built together. The audacity in that sentence was enough to make me laugh out loud, even with my chest still aching. I read it again just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating from the pain medication. No apology. No mention of my heart attack. No concern for what had nearly killed me. Just fear of losing the financial leverage they'd held over me for so long. Then came Brittany's social media masterpiece. She uploaded a video to Facebook. No music, no filters, just a slow dramatic walkthrough of our parents' house. But not their normal lived-in house. This was completely gutted. Foreclosure empty. Front door propped open with a brick. Living room stripped bare. Even the ceiling fans had been removed. The caption read, "When your own family destroys everything you've worked for." And tagged at the bottom, "Thanks for nothing at Natalie." I watched it once, then opened my banking app and pulled up the mortgage account. It had defaulted 3 months ago. They'd borrowed against the house equity to pay off Brittany's credit card debt and fund Kyle's food truck business idea that lasted exactly 6 weeks. None of that money had gone toward mortgage payments. The bank had finally moved in. What I discovered next made everything crystal clear. My family hadn't just been quietly draining me, they'd been circling Grandpa Joe too, especially since he'd retired from his construction business. Brittany had suddenly started inviting him to brunch, something she'd never done before. Kyle brought him a Father's Day gift for the first time in years. Mom started hinting during their phone calls that he should think about what's fair for everyone. Grandpa Joe had seen it all coming and prepared accordingly. Every asset, every investment account, every piece of property he owned, he'd already quietly moved most of it into a family trust. Not to punish them, but to protect it from them. And now, he was transferring the bulk of it under a new name, mine. Not as a reward. Not as some kind of prize for being the good daughter. But because I was the only one who'd never asked for it. I'd proven, painfully and clearly, that I could survive without their money, that I didn't feel entitled to anyone else's success. In his words, that made me the only one worthy of protecting his life's work. That night, Brittany showed up at the hospital again. Security didn't let her pass the lobby, but I could see her through my window, pacing the parking lot with her phone pressed to her ear, clearly talking to someone, probably Kyle. She had sunglasses on even though it was almost dark, like she was preparing for some confrontation that never materialized. She left after 20 minutes, but an hour later, a final message came through, "If you don't fix this mess, I swear you'll regret it for the rest of your life." No emoji hearts, no love you sis, no fake concern. Just that threat. And it didn't hit the way she thought it would. I didn't feel scared or cornered or guilty. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel anything except relief. I had stopped trying to be the perfect daughter, the reliable sister, the family fixer who smoothed over everyone else's disasters. Now I was just free. The next morning brought a knock on my hospital room door. I assumed it was a nurse with more medications. Instead, it was a hospital administrator looking uncomfortable. "There's a woman downstairs claiming to be your medical power of attorney," she said. "She says she's your sister and needs to speak with your doctor about your treatment plan immediately." I stared, confused at first. I hadn't listed anyone from my immediate family as an emergency contact, just Grandpa Joe. When I asked who it was, she checked her notes, "Brittany Coleman. She seems very insistent." I almost laughed. Brittany hadn't texted me in days except to threaten me. Hadn't visited once. Hadn't even acknowledged I'd nearly died until I cut off her rent money. And now she was trying to make medical decisions for me. I told them absolutely no one from my immediate family was authorized to speak on my behalf. Hospital security escorted her out without letting her anywhere near my floor. I thought that was the end of her dramatic performance. I was wrong. It was just the beginning of something much worse. A few hours later, Grandpa Joe walked into my room holding a manila envelope, his expression grimmer than I'd ever seen it. He dropped it on my hospital bed and sat down heavily in the visitor chair. Inside were printed screenshots of email exchanges between my parents and Morrison and Associates, a small law firm I'd never heard of. They were inquiring about emergency guardianship procedures, specifically regarding me. I read the emails 3 times, certain I was misunderstanding something. But no. They were trying to claim I was mentally unstable, emotionally volatile, possibly suffering from post-traumatic stress after my breakdown. Their goal was transparent. If they could get Dad appointed as my temporary conservator, they could freeze every financial change I'd made and restore their access to my accounts. They were actually trying to have me declared incompetent. The same people who hadn't bothered checking if I was alive 4 days ago. I sat with that information for a long time, processing it. Grandpa Joe told me this wasn't entirely new territory for him. Years ago, when my Uncle Danny tried to break away from the family for similar reasons, my parents had floated this same idea. It never went anywhere because Danny folded and came back. But now, with real money at stake through Grandpa Joe's trust, they were actually filing papers. They weren't calling because they cared about my health. They were calling because they were financially cornered and desperate. Something clicked into place inside me that day. I'd spent years hoping they'd eventually recognize how much I sacrificed, maybe even apologize for taking advantage of my generosity. But they weren't capable of that kind of self-reflection. Instead, they were trying to rewrite the entire story, casting me as the unstable villain who'd turned on her loving family. So I made my own list. Every shared account, every co-signed loan, every automatic payment I'd ever set up to help them over the years. My lawyer, the one Grandpa Joe had connected me with, came by that evening with paperwork already prepared. We filed the next morning, a cease and desist order barring both my sisters and parents from contacting any of my doctors or attempting to make medical decisions on my behalf. Fraud alerts on every financial institution where I'd ever shared access with family members. A legal hold on any property transfers connected to my name. If anyone tried to sell or refinance something I'd co-signed, it would trigger an automatic freeze. I also had my HR department redirect all my direct deposits to a new bank account, one they didn't know existed, under the protection of Grandpa Joe's family trust. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly financially secure. Then Brittany made her next move. She posted a video on Instagram, makeup smudged, lighting deliberately terrible, camera shaking just enough to look authentic and raw. She never said my name directly, but she said enough. Someone in our family is going through something really dark right now. We're trying to help him, her, but they're lashing out and destroying everything we've built together. There was that phrase again, everything we've built. Like I'd wandered into their empire and randomly started flipping switches. The video went viral in our small town. Brittany's friends started commenting with heart emojis and praying for your family messages. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years sent concerned texts. Even some of my old co-workers reached out asking if I was okay. Kyle shared it with a simple caption, "Family is everything. We love you no matter what." As if I was some prodigal daughter who'd lost her way instead of someone who'd nearly died while they were having barbecues. But I didn't fold this time. Instead, I posted something of my own, just a single photo of me sitting up in the hospital bed next to Grandpa Joe, both of us smiling genuinely. No dramatic lighting, no lengthy caption explaining my side. Just, sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom. 2 hours later, my phone exploded with missed calls. Brittany, Kyle, Mom, Dad, all of them trying to reach me simultaneously. I didn't answer a single one. The final message came from Dad, "We didn't want it to come to this, Natalie. You're forcing us to do things we never wanted to do." They still thought they held all the power, had no idea what was actually coming next. The next morning brought a hand-delivered envelope to the hospital, a legal document that made me laugh out loud. It was a newly drafted will from Dad, hastily written the week after their failed conservatorship attempt. In shaky handwriting at the bottom, Natalie is disinherited until she reconciles with this family and makes things right. They were still trying to bait me back with threats and manipulations, not understanding the fundamental truth. I wanted to be free of them completely. So I had my lawyer draft a final response. A legal waiver of any claim to their estates, a permanent no-contact order, and signed documents removing them as emergency contacts for any medical or legal matters. It was clean, direct, and absolute. 2 weeks later, Grandpa Joe and I moved to Colorado. He said he wanted to see the mountains again before he got too old to enjoy them. We found a small cabin outside Boulder, where I took a remote marketing job, cut my hours in half, and started actually living instead of just surviving. Every few months, someone from my past reaches out, a high school friend, a former neighbor, someone who heard something happened with my family and wants to know the real story. I never explain, because people like Brittany, Kyle, and my parents are experts at crafting narratives where they're always the victims, always the ones betrayed by someone selfish and cruel. Let them have their version. I have something better, the truth and genuine peace. Peace is infinitely better than being loved by people who only value you when you're useful. Peace means waking up every morning knowing that my kindness isn't being weaponized against me, that my bank account is truly mine, that the people in my life chose to be there instead of needing to be there. I learned that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about showing up, especially when it's hard, especially when there's nothing in it for you. Grandpa Joe taught me that. The rest of them taught me everything else I needed to know. Sometimes the best thing you can do for toxic people is let them go completely.